Fire Emblem! Quite possibly the most hidden treasure amongst the Nintendo titles. And with it nearing its 25th anniversary in 2015, I thought, why not make a video about it? Now, I think we've all heard about how Nintendo didn't even introduce the series outside of Japan until the popularization of the FE characters in Super Smash Bros. Melee with Marth and Roy. With Nintendo seeing how much people liked Marth and Roy, they decided, hey, maybe they would like to pray. And thus released the next games in the series in the West. And thus, Fire Emblem came out in the Game Boy Advance. Unfortunately, that completely ruined the title sequence, as in Japan, it was released as Fire Emblem Rekken no Ken. However, since it was the first to be released in the West, it was simply referred to as Fire Emblem. Or, Fire Emblem the Sword of Flame. But as you can see, nowhere on the box art does it actually say Sword of Flame. Nor does it have a sword on fire. Regardless, this led to all future FE games having Western exports. However, Fire Emblem is actually the 7th game in the series, and if you aren't accustomed to the series, you may need to be told that the specific Ginge on the box art isn't actually Roy. No, that's Roy's father, Elwood. Meaning, the first Fire Emblem game to be released in the West is actually a prequel sequel. And what else? I love it. And this game came out in 2003. I mean, check out these badass animations. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Wait, what? I mean, that's what I love about these games on the Game Boy Advance. Lord Hector over here is twirling his axe around like he's attempting to achieve flight all helicopter style, and he doesn't even bat his single pixelated eye. I mean, look at the comparison of a Heroes Critical animation in the Game Boy Advance games versus the most recent Fire Emblem game. Now, they're not bad by any means, and hey, I still love Awakening. I mean, I've played upwards of 200 hours, but the animations in Game Boy Advance, they seem more aesthetically pleasing. Something about those animations that feel unique and tight, even with the constraints of the 32-bit Game Boy Advance. But hey, that's just me. However, as I said before, the first Fire Emblem game to be released in the West starred Elwood, not Roy. It was in fact a prequel, meaning that there's another game on the Game Boy Advance with the luscious animations that I've never played. But alas, this game was never released outside of Japan. Meaning with no official game at my disposal, I have to rely on some handy-dandy fan-translated games to get my fill of Fire Emblem Funo Binding Blade. Or, Sword of Seals? Wait, what? Now, the first thing to notice is some of the great translations at my disposal, such as the, Social Knight. With the ability to torment you with small talk. Now, the game takes place 20 years after the events of FE7, and it starts with the country falling into a state of war as per usual of a Fire Emblem game. With one country being dicks and undoubtedly wanting to resurrect some sort of dragon to destroy humanity, whatever. Alright, so, yada yada yada. Is that Elwood? Man, 20 years really hit him hard. Wait a minute. Elwood was only about 17 in his game, and this game takes place 20 years later. He's only about 37, at most 40. Then again, this is medieval-esque setting, so I suppose I can suspend my disbelief, and... is that Hector? Is that Hector with a behemoth of a beard? What the hell? Elwood looks like his face got shrink-wrapped, and Hector looks like he can conquer the world. And all the booty. May I add, by the way, that the assumingly 2 titular characters in this game look like they're about 10. Oh, I'm sorry, 15. Could have fooled me. The thing is, when Elwood was in his prime, game, he was about 17 and looked like that. Boy Roy, supposedly 15, but as you can see, there's more of an age gap of 2 years. It's closer to 8, which I think Nintendo noticed because in Roy's updated artwork for Awakening, he got a buff and no longer looks like a 4-year-old. Babyface aside, what I already love so much about the game is actually playing it after Recka-Ticka Ting Tang, and that I get to see what happens to many of the characters that I loved. And it actually made me love specific characters all the more, such as Sue and the twins Lou and Ray, being children from some of my favorite characters, Lynn and Nino, respectively, as well as many others. Even though most are simply speculated, you can see the similarities. If there's one thing that always made me laugh from the Fire Emblem games, it's that anyone who isn't going to be recruited or a boss, It looks like a rat going through the first stages of evolution. Alright, enough talk, let's get underway. Oh no. Oh no, is that, oh my god, it is! Marcus? Marcus is back, oh my god, have pity on thine enemies' souls for when Marcus takes the field. You know, I don't think I've ever seen him smile. I think I'll fix that up. Now, the mistake I used to make as a kid is that I never actually used my lords to fight, in fear that if they would die, I would have to start the game all over. However, I prefer to have all my characters alive, and if any of them died anyway, I'd restart regardless. So it makes no sense not to make them a viable character. So let's go, Roy. Show me what you got. Now, for those of you who don't know what these nifty little numbers at the side are, those are the stats for this little spar. And as you see here, Elroy over here has a 95% chance of hitting this massive meat. But, you know what? It's fine. Whatever. 95% chance is it's just unlucky. Now, while missing his chance to hit with a 95% chance is unfortunate, also being hit by 28% is just an insult to injury. I actually did a little math, and this specific situation only had a 1.4% chance of happening. And I'd be hard-pressed to say that it wasn't the last time that my Water Roy beat the odds. So after beating Damas, we find out that elderly Elwood is actually sick, and as such puts his 15-year-old son in charge of his kingdom's army. You know, I see no flaw in this plan, but no worries. He'll send Merlinius too. I'm actually not excited to see him. So our army of 8-year-olds and chaperone Marcus are on their way to gather an army against Sideburns. Our band of children are also waiting for reinforcements because there's no possible way that they can quell the epidemic of Ratface. And yes, that man's name is Deke. We finally get to the destination of Arafan, where we can meet up with the handsome Herr Hector and his fortified beer. Unfortunately, like every single level, the place we're going to is completely controlled by the enemy. And here we have a guy named Slater who's simply attacked because his beard cannot compare to Hector's bombastic blue bumblebeard. Oh no. No. From severe anger that they couldn't possibly achieve such ultimate underhair, they threw hot sauce on him in attempts to burn it away. Or they stabbed him. One of the two. Or both. Poor Lord Nectar then tells us that it was in fact dragons that helped overthrow the castle, as they too were enraged by their inability to grow facial hair. Stop with the beard talk. I'm sorry. Just stop already. I'm sorry. Anyways, Hector explains all about the dragons and the sassy weapons that defeat them. And then... oh no. He died? I'm gonna miss that man and his big old bear beard. The rest of the game then consists of an epic quest collecting the ever-growing army to find legendary weapons to fight against the dragons that will eventually stop them. And by the way, when I say ever-growing, I mean that in the harshest way possible. Seriously, I think I got a new unit almost every chapter. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I like a diverse range of characters, but the problem is that within this game and even FE7, there isn't a lot of time to train any of them. In fact, unless you grind people out at the arena, it's hard to get even a small amount of your units leveled up. And Binding Blade loves to continue to toss you new characters extremely late into the game. Now, usually characters that start unpromoted and low starting stats mean that if you properly train them, they simply dwarf any and all previous characters. Which is fair, a lot of effort has to go into leveling them up, especially late in the game. However, this game gives you so many underleveled characters that it's frightening. The thing is, at most you can deploy about 12, maybe 16 characters tops, and this game gives you 50 plus characters to use, most of which come in the later half of the game. But anyways, rant over, I'm almost done with this level, no one left but the boss, and I can continue. Wait, what the? No. How is that fair? How? No, this is one of the most egregious flaws in the game, the ability for an enemy to spawn and also attack in the same turn. Now, while it does add a little bit of a shock value for you to have to quickly change your strategy with a changing situation, when there is no time for you to actually counter the new units pooping out of nowhere and insta-fucking my healer, well, you can imagine why I'm a little less than stellar with this outcome. Not to mention, when you repeatedly lose in a mission, you have to watch the same cutscenes every single time, over and over and over. Chapter 14. As for the rest of the game, it's pretty much what you'd come to expect from a Fire Emblem game. But it's very clear the improvements that were made in the later games, namely that you can use items outside of battle. In Binding Blade, you have to promote characters during battles as well as give them stat boosting items. While nothing game breaking, it's pretty annoying. Now, typically, Fire Emblem games last around 25 chapters, at least from my experience anyways. However, this one's sorta odd, because in order to get past level 22, you need to have received each and every legendary weapon, and you can only receive each and every weapon in optional side quests, which essentially makes them non-optional. Not only do you essentially not beat the game, but after you finally defeat Zephyl, and then what happens? Wait, the murdered dragon lady just kinda escapes? Never to be found again? Oh, no, that's okay. GG, the end. Wait, seriously? That's it? A being capable of killing the entire human race is out and about and we're just gonna be like, meh? As I said before, I did not actually achieve the best ending in the game. In fact, the only way to beat the game is to have collected each and every legendary weapon. Which, on one side I want to say is a pretty neat challenge to replay and actually acquire each and every weapon. However, in this playthrough, it was something I was completely unaware of until it was too late. Now, hopefully the ending of all these 2-year-olds' lives looks bright. Oh, okay, so everyone sort of just rebuilt their homes and... or just left. Or practiced. I know that you get a different ending when they have A ranking supports, but the supporting system is so hard and tedious that there's no way of getting it efficiently without grinding it out. AKA 60 to 90 turns. This is what makes me question the title, as I really don't feel satisfied with the ending. Understandably, I could replay the entire game to officially beat it. However, I feel sorta let down in general how my army just sorta stops full well knowing that a power capable of killing everyone's still booping around. Which is very inconvenient because the backstory of Zephyl is better than most villains in the entire series. In Blazing Sword, he's nothing but a frightened boy who's pressured with the fact that he is to be heir of the throne, and yet doesn't have the love of his father. He even prays for happiness for his family during an assassination attempt. However, no matter how much he tries to earn his father's love, he is doomed to be hated. His father even goes so far as to kill a baby fox Zephyl gave his younger sister, as well as the king trying to kill his son by charading it as acceptance. When Zephyl later survived the poisoning attempt, heartbroken and betrayed, he killed his own father during his fake funeral. While he is the main antagonist, the game does humanize him as a person, and makes his story infinitely more tragic. Zephyl is simply a troubled child who had never been loved and simply tired of the fallenness of humans. But coupled with the laziness of my particular ending, as well as a bland epilogue of my army, it becomes quite disappointing. But so my adventures with Roysos end, with essentially nothing being resolved and my army dispersing like someone caught a strain of the rat-face plague, and I can't help but feel slightly let down. Even with the graphics that tickle my tittles and the return of some old characters and their offspring, it's hard to look past some of the bigger problems, such as a statistically worthless lord, too many weak, late-joining characters, and a pretty lackluster ending unless you complete every optional side quest. I wouldn't say the game was awful, as I said the villain in the game was a bit more fleshed out, but only if you had prior knowledge to the character in FE7. But for me, it was very clear that there were many more improvements made in the later titles. I would still suggest any Fire Emblem lover to play this game, as it's just simply my opinion. And who knows, maybe you'll find that you really love it. However, for me, this wasn't the most enjoyable Fire Emblem experience, and I'm glad to have been introduced into the series shortly after. But here's to the next game in the series. Hopefully that lord doesn't have a crippling addiction to blunt force trauma. Disagree with something I said? Of course you do. It's the internet. Is Fire Emblem 6 your secret lover in the night, or do you think it's a bump in the Fire Emblem road? Leave a comment below about your thoughts. No opinion's wrong. And if you're oddly attracted to my voice, hey, be a pal and maybe like and subscribe. And perhaps share the video with another pal who's got the Fire Emblem itch. Be sure to also check out my good friend's video all about his thoughts on some Zelda stuff, and there's plenty more on the way. Until next time, you sassy little poots, you.